Hello boys and girls. Alfie and I were just having a little chat. Alfie's got to make a decision. You don't like making decisions, do you? No, well, what it is, he's been so helpful to me lately, which makes a bit of a change. I thought I'd give him a little reward, so I was giving him a choice of different things that he could do or different things he could have, and he just can't make his mind up. No, you can't have all of them. You've got to choose. Oh dear, I think this might take some time. Yes, I think you better think about it. But you know, boys and girls, sometimes we have to make decisions. Sometimes you have to choose between one thing or another. And sometimes we can make mistakes when we make decisions. Actually, today is all about somebody who had to choose, and he didn't find it easy. Shall we have the story? Right, okay. Well, you remember last week we heard about a little boy? That's right, his name was Samuel, and God called him. And while he was still young, God said that Samuel was going to be his servant. He was going to work for God. And he did. As Samuel grew up, he was so devoted to God. Everything he did was to please God. And he was very kind, he was very helpful, but he was very fair as well in everything that he did, and the people trusted him. Years later, the people asked Samuel for a king, and God gave them a king. His name was Saul. But this king was a bit of a disaster. He didn't do the things that he should. He was a big disappointment to God. So our story today starts off with God speaking to Samuel and saying, Samuel, I want you to find another king, a king of my choosing, a king who will serve me and a king who will be good for the people. So Samuel set off, and God guided him to a little town in Israel called Bethlehem. Now, have you heard of Bethlehem? That's where Jesus was born. That's right. Well, this was many, many years before Jesus was born. And in the town of Bethlehem, there lived a man called Jesse. That's a girl's name. Well, not always. It can be a boy's name as well. And Jesse lived there with his family, and he had quite a big family. He had a lot of sons. And Samuel went to Jesse's house, knocked at the door, and Jesse came to the door, and he saw Samuel, and he thought, oh, it's Samuel, because Samuel was a really important person. And Samuel said to him, I've come today to choose one of your sons to be the next king. And Jesse thought, wow, that's fantastic. So he brought all his sons in, and he brought the first of his sons, and he stood before Samuel, and Samuel looked at him and he thought, that's a fine young man. He's tall, he's good looking, he's strong. He'd be good to lead the army. You think he looks good? That's got to be the one. And that's what Samuel thought as well. But God said to him, no. You see, you are looking out the outside, but I'm looking at the heart. I'm looking inside at what sort of a person Eliab is. And he's not the right king. So that wasn't going to be the one. No. So the second one came, and he looked pretty good as well. And he was tall and good looking and strong. Do you think this is going to be the one? No, it wasn't. God said, not this one either. And the third one came. He had a bit of a funny name. His name was Abinadab. You don't want any more funny names today. Okay. And Samuel said, surely this is the one. And God said, no. And he went to the fourth, and God said, no, that's right. How many are there? Well, there are 7 altogether, and we've got as far as number 4, haven't we? So do you think it's going to be number 5? It's going to be the last one, you think? Okay, well, number 5 came, and God said, no, not this one either. And then number 6, and God said, correct. He said, no. And he came to the very last one, the 7th son. And he stood in front of Samuel, and what do you think Samuel said? Samuel said yes. So is this going to be the next king? No. God said no again. You think we've got a problem? We've run out of sons. Well, that's what Samuel thought as well. And he turned to Jesse and he said, are these all your sons? Are there any more? And Jesse said, well, there is one more. He's the youngest. He's out looking after the sheep. Right, said Samuel, bring him in. We're not going to do anything else until he comes in. And they went out and fetched the youngest son. And in he came. And as Samuel looked at him, God said to him, that's the one. That's going to be the next king. And do you know what the name of this young man was? Was it a funny name? No, it wasn't. It wasn't strange. In fact, you know somebody by the same name. No, it wasn't Alfie. His name was David. And David did become the next king. Not straight away. In fact, not for quite a few years. But he knew one day he was going to be the king of Israel. And he was going to do some amazing things. And you know, Alfie, many years later, David's descendants, one of David's great descendants, was the Lord Jesus himself. And David was the right choice. You know, Alfie, the great thing about Samuel is when he made his decisions, he always had God in mind. He always trusted God to help him and to lead him. And that's why Samuel made good decisions. And that's why David was such a great king. We're going to hear a little bit more about David and Samuel next week. But for now, that's our story. So, have you thought about your decision? Okay, we'll let you know what happens. Bye for now.